welcome to this very special edition of ET Now Startup Central, India's first and only daily show dedicated to startups, technology and entrepreneurship. I have a very special guest with me today, the man who really drives technology for Amazon, the Chief Technology Officer of Amazon.com, Werner Vogel. Thank you so much for talking to ET Now, your only television interview. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
You've been in India for, what, a week so far, meeting customers, meeting potential customers. Tell us about the adoption that AWS has seen in this market, the appetite for Amazon Web Services as far as India is concerned.
So many of our Indian customers were actually already customers before we launched a region here locally. We did that about 9 months ago. And let's say 9 months ago, we had about 75,000 customers here in India. Many of them well-known Indian companies like Hungama, for example, who were one of our earliest adopters of using Amazon Cloud Services. But in the last, let's say 9 months, we've seen a tremendous rise in adoption now that we have local capabilities here on the ground. And we've grown to 120,000 customers here.
That's almost a 60% growth.
Yes. And so it's clearly typical to what we see when we bring sort of local capabilities to the market, but here we've seen a real fast acceleration happening. Not only the startup segment, because there already many startups were our customers, but enterprises, for example, are all making use of AWS today to move faster, because they have to compete with startups today, and digital is often the channel through which they compete first.
Right. You mentioned the local capabilities part, but give us some details. I mean, 60% growth in a year, and it's not a small base that we're talking about. How did you do that? Well,
I think it is a natural progression. I mean, cloud is the new normal today for most companies. Yeah? Nobody buys hardware anymore. It is really, if you want to move fast, yeah, if you want to be agile, if you want to be secure, cloud is the place to be. And I think security, for example, plays an increasingly important role for our customers. Yeah? Security is a continuously moving target. There's no line in the sand that says, oh, now we don't have to worry about security anymore. And customers start to understand that it's hard for them to make these investments themselves. Yeah? Amazon, however, can continue to make these investments. It will be forever a number one investment area, and as such, many of our customers are considering AWS or moving over to AWS or starting there, because they know they can get security that they would never be able to achieve themselves.
You know, we often talk about how India's become a war for sort of global giants, you know, be it any segment, the online commerce segment or the cab aggregation segment. Are we seeing a similar scenario play out in cloud as well? Because Microsoft also has big plans for this region. So what's going to be the differentiator for Amazon going forward?
Well, first of all, I don't think, you know, I don't like the word war. Yeah, I think we're still very much in a phase where it's about cloud, for helping customers start to consider that cloud is the best alternative for them to actually buy and invest hardware themselves. Yeah, we still want to move more customers that are running on their own hardware, moving them over to the cloud. This is not going to be a winner-take-all business. Yeah, it's not going to be, there's probably going to be a handful of customers, a handful of sort of global players that will be successful. And I think India, with its tremendous, let's say, capabilities in terms of both startups as well as enterprises, you know, there's many of our customers here. So it's obvious that everybody is looking at this. You also have to realize that we're the pioneers in this area. You know? And there is no shortcut for experience. Customers really are picking AWS because we're the company that actually really understands how to help them get there.
And way back in 2008.
But we've moved also way beyond sort of what's called infrastructure as a service. Yeah, the early days of cloud were compute, storage, databases, networking. That's sort of the basic building blocks. AWS is long beyond that. We offer services for IoT, for example, Tata Motors instruments their trucks here on the road using AWS, or development in mobile. Yeah, Inmobi, a well-known ad-serving tech company, uses those services. Any other or for example, Alt Digital, who just had streaming all their digital services now. Yeah, and so all making use of our mobile services. Then all the analytics, yeah, all the enterprise services, all development services. There's such a well over 90 different services available for our customers. So if you ask customers why they're using AWS, it's because it allows them to move really fast. And it's not just because you can get 10,000 servers with a click of a button, but it's because you no longer have to think about implementing search or helping you do mobile or thinking about analytics, because all those tools are available for you in the cloud. So it is really the breadth and the depth of the Amazon platform that sets us apart from other players. Plus we have a very different mentality. Yeah? So you can think about business mentality as sometimes your competitor following. You're doing like the front runner is doing, and that's what we see in much of this world, of course, happening. That's not us. No, we are really the innovators. We're looking at sort of what are the pain points that our customers are still having, and then building new features and services for that. Last year, we launched well over 1,000 new major features and services for our customers, mostly by feedback that we're getting from them. And so, for example, here in India, if you have 120,000 businesses running on this platform, we get a lot of feedback from customers, and we're able to actually iterate really quickly to serve them better.
Right, right. And just want to understand, in terms of the adoption, are you seeing, small and medium enterprises perhaps take much faster to AWS? Do you still see scope to crack some of the larger enterprises, or, are they still investing in their own data centers? What differentiation are you seeing?
Well, I see. So I always try to divide things up in sort of 3 different areas. So one is the startups. It's obvious. These days, there's nobody in the startup world gets investment anymore to buy hardware.
Right.
And but what we see is sort of the largest enterprises equally. Everybody knows that competition these days is going to come out of this startup segment. So if you're a financial services company, like Bajaj Financial Services or the Axis Bank, all of them are making use of AWS because they want to make sure they can move as fast as that these startups can move. And so, or take, for example, a completely different segment. Take hospitality. And so we already know that. So the Airbnbs of this world. 450,000 people a night are spending a night in a room broken by Airbnb. And then you have the large hotel chains who compete against Airbnb. They're all moving as fast. They're all building differentiating services using AWS, even to the point that some hotel chains, like Kempinski, are going all in.
Right.
And then in the middle, you have this section of small and medium hotels. They've never had IT people. They maybe had someone on Friday afternoon that came and do the backups or something like that. So those are now making use of the services of an Indian company called HotelLogic. HotelLogic provides enterprise-grade property management for hotels as a service. So no longer they need to have installed software on PCs and things like that. They can make use of software as a service that deeply integrates into all the world's search engines. So now suddenly small and boutique hotels here in India are immediately integrated with real-time sort of room information into the world's largest search engines.
Right.
And so all of these things, what you can see is the whole segment. Small businesses, small, young businesses, as well as small and medium hotels, as well as the largest enterprises in hotels, all are using the same services. So you get a complete democratization effect there, where now they have to compete on who provides the best service to their customers.
You mentioned all this, but I just want to understand, compared to, say, enterprises in developed markets like US or Europe, how is the adoption in India? Is there still some way to go in terms of investments in technology? Is that a priority area at all for most companies today?
Well, what we see, I think, if you look at sort of the growth that we've seen in the past 9 months, hasn't necessarily come out of the startup segment. We see continuous growth there. And for example, I think your story published an article, I think not so long ago, about the 100 most important startups in India. 90 of those were running on AWS. So that will continue.
Quite a statistic.
That will continue to do that, to run like that. What we see, the most of the growth in the past 9 months has come out of the enterprise segment. Where they're comfortable now with the fact that there is a region on the ground here, that we have local capabilities on the ground that they can make use of.
Right.
And we also see an acceleration happening because most of these companies are looking towards, let's say, Western companies like General Electric or Unilever or Shell, all of them who have adopted Amazon Cloud Services. And as such, they think, well, these companies probably have done their due diligence already. And as such, we see a true acceleration happening here.
Right. I've asked you about the, this from the point of view of a customer, but in terms of enterprises themselves, we've seen a lot of companies coming out in the software as a service space from India, building solutions for global clients. I mean, Chennai is a huge SaaS hub, so is Pune. Have you had a chance to look at some of these companies? Are they, strategic for you going forward? Will you look at perhaps an acquisition of an Indian SaaS place? Just
Well,
want
we
to
have nothing
understand.
to announce there. Let's put it like that. But we have a great partner ecosystem here in India. We had a special day even after our Mumbai summit that specifically focused on the Indian partner ecosystem, which is huge. You mentioned Chennai's Ramco, for example, the ERP provider. Already a number of years ago launched their software as a service. When they built their software as a service product, they built it specifically on AWS. And they've seen tremendous growth in that particular segment because they're running on AWS. But also, I think another important part of the technology ecosystem here in India is the system integrators.
Right.
Yeah? And of course, all the large system integrators, whether it's the Infosys, the Wipros, the Cognizants of this world, all have a practice that really exemplifies AWS. But what we've seen here in India is also a number of what I would call born in the cloud system integrators, young businesses that are targeting enterprise customers to help them with a really cloud native mindset. Companies like BlazeClan or Minjar are really successful on our platform, helping enterprise customers migrate into AWS.
Right. In terms of, the investment going forward in India, both in terms of the quantum of money you will be investing and also the jobs you want to create here, take us through, the scale and scope that you see.
Well, I think every engineer today knows that, their future is on AWS. Yeah, and I think what we've seen, for example, in the past year is a rise of 300% in the number of certifications that we're doing. So for us, training is an important part of our business, yeah, because we want to make sure that engineers really have the skills to be able to operate and work with AWS. And we have a whole range of these certifications, all the way from DevOps to architecture to design to management. All of these certifications help engineers demonstrate to their potential employers that they are actually really well versed on AWS. It's one of the most sought after certifications at this moment in the market. So training for us is extremely important, and we help actually engineers and customers get to a really good point there.
Right. I also want to understand you've recently opened up the tech behind Alexa to developers. Chatbots seems to be a big bet for you. How has India taken to Alexa and Echo? Are you seeing a lot of adoption here? And what other technologies will you bring to Indian consumers going forward?
So we definitely will bring these technologies here to India. And let me explain sort of how this works. There's an underlying base that's called machine learning, yeah, and deep learning in this particular case. That's sort of the AI technology, neural networks, things like that. What we realized is that most of developers will not have that deep knowledge to able to build these networks themselves. But what they really enjoy is having sort of these higher level services like image recognition. Yeah, where you can give an image to a service and it will tell you, these are the attributes. This is a person. Yeah, she has black hair, she's smiling, she has earrings, and so with a likelihood, so sort of describing the picture. Or, for example, natural language understanding and automatic speech recognition, or text to speech. All of these things run on these neural networks, these deep learning networks that sit underneath there, but these higher level services are very easy to use for everybody. So if you want to build your own Alexa, you can with two of our services called Amazon Lex, yeah, which is automatic speech recognition and natural language understanding, and talking back to customers by using text to speech through a service called Polly, Amazon Polly. And so customers can do this. It is absolutely the future of how systems are going to build. I don't necessarily like the word chatbots because it is so much broader than that. You know, it's sort of the first implementation that is being done by a number of our customers, but more importantly, voice is such a natural way of interaction. We do this all the time. All the interfaces that we've had with computers have been driven by the capabilities of those computers. Screens, keyboards, maybe a mouse or maybe a touch screen, but it's still the computer. the interface is either a green character terminal or a web page or a card on your phone. In essence, your phone is just, again, a screen and a keyboard. Natural way of interaction, and we see that immediately, for example, with more elderly people or with young people, they have no problem interacting with voice systems. Yeah? Or, for example, you talked about developing countries. In many of them, smartphones are not going to be the default way of accessing digital services. Voices. Yeah? And so we have, for example, a customer it's called the International Rice Research Institute. They sit outside Manila. They've built a system where they're the experts in growing rice, where small farmers can describe what kind of patch of land they have. Yeah? And then the system will come back and say, this is the amount of fertilizer that you have to buy, and this is when you have to deploy it. Okay. If you do this in a digital way, then nobody can access this because nobody has digital services. However, the village phone, they can call into this system, describe their land, and then machine learning goes off and comes back with the answer saying, this is the amount of fertilizer you have to buy, and then you have to apply it. It reduces the amount of fertilizer by 90%, doubles crop yield. But these systems are voice systems. Everybody knows how to use a voice system. And I think most of our digital systems in the future will be built in a conversational approach. Yeah, and so that looks like these chatbots, but it's so much broader than this. Voice will really become the way in which digital systems will be accessed.
Right, and my follow-up to that is on local languages in particular. I mean, people have been talking forever about the potential of local languages in India. Do you think it's scalable now? Your thoughts on that?
Well, we're on the cusp of that. Yeah, if you look at not just India. India has many of these languages, of course, and we're not even talking about dialects. Yeah. But in the world, there are 9,606 languages. Yeah. Of those, only 230 are Western languages. And so the first languages that we started off with in the whole of this world, we had humans basically involved in testing whether this all worked correctly. The future of this, however, is automatic language understanding. Yeah? Being able to take sort of tapes and historical information about these languages and learn these languages automatically, because that's the only way to scale these things up. Now, there's still a lot of research going on in this world, but I'm confident that many of these languages will be learned in an automatic fashion. Now, there's many here in India. In Papua New Guinea, a very not so big island, there's 830 different languages.
Oh my God.
And so there's a lot of work still to be done, but I'm confident that with automation and with new machine learning capabilities, we'll be able to learn these languages automatically.
Right. Before I let you go, I want you to give us two opportunities and two threats going forward as far as technology is concerned. What is your take? What should we be worried about, say, in the next decade, and what should we look forward to?
Well, let's start off with, and I mentioned this earlier, I think security, as we've seen in the past 2-3 years, that the threat models are changing dramatically. Yeah.
Big enough to change elections.
Well, it's also now, take for example here in India, where the government is doing a real push for digital integration into anything. And I think that will bring sort of digital, let's say, and whether that is competition or whether it's other states or whether it's just individuals, the threat models will change dramatically. And as such, making sure that we can protect sort of citizens or customers or businesses will, I think, be the biggest challenge that we face in the coming 5 to 10 years. Or maybe that's a challenge that will never go away. Right. Because remember, these kind of security issues have no borders. Yeah, and as such, I think to make kind of investments to protect our customers will be forever our number one priority. Now, what's the opportunities? I mean, what I look at...
You don't see, threat from robots taking over jobs and...
I think what we've seen in the past with new technologies is that there's always a shift happening. Yeah? If we go back in history, when, these days we all think that refrigerators are fine. We've accepted refrigerators. But when refrigerators were first introduced, the whole ice business was basically being disintermediated. Yeah? Or, steel industry or others. We've seen every time these new innovations happening, which seem to be threatening to a particular part of the industry, most people get retrained and reassessed to actually have jobs that are safer and better for them.
Right.
And so, as such, I believe that what we've seen, for example, with cloud, is not that sort of, well, people hardly buy any hardware anymore. What we see is people out of those industries all becoming, let's say, data architects, or becoming
to a different
transition, and often to a much loftier future. And as such, I'm not that pessimistic at all. Will jobs disappear? Yes, but I think they will also shift to different areas.
Right.
It's not just the fact that we've seen, let's say, cloud take over. We've seen so many more services being built, so many more things being built now because cloud is available. Remember, many of these startups that we were talking about that are highly successful, hired so many engineers, didn't exist 5-6 years ago. Yeah, and so as such, I
hope they don't disappear in the next 5 years.
Definitely not. Yeah, so I'm very bullish on that. We'll be able to create many more jobs because of the kind of things that we're doing now.
Right. Anything else you want to add on the opportunity?
Well, I think one of the things that we see, what I see is that now with cloud, we've seen a true democratization happening in terms of IT. IT is no longer a differentiator.
Right.
The fact that large enterprises could invest enormous amounts of money in the past and gave them an edge no longer exists. So it is really that all companies now have access to the same kind of capabilities. Now, what starts to differentiate themselves is how they use data. How do they data analytics? Yeah? What kind of new data sources can they create? And making sure that they can target their customers better in ways that they were never able to do before. So I think something that we'll see in the coming years happening, many companies are rising around it, seeing analytics becoming much more important in the world of companies. And I think, for example, I like a quote from General Electric's CEO and president, Jeff Immelt, who says, "One day I went to bed as a manufacturing company, the next day I woke up as a software and analytics company." And I think that's something we see, for example, happening here in India all the time, where companies are continuously thinking about, how should I reinvent myself? Because it's all about survival. Digital transformation is all about surviving in a modern marketplace, moving fast. And remember, survival is not about the fittest, it is about the most adaptive. Those who are actually adopting the new technologies, like cloud and like AI, will be the ones that are surviving.
Sure. On that note, thank you so much for talking to ED now. Thank you so
my
much.
pleasure.